Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Emmy-nominated Creatives panel. I'm Mark Peikert, founder of Meet Me at Crafty, and I'm excited to talk with some creatives behind the Emmy-nominated Netflix series Sirens and learn about each of their creative processes on this series and beyond. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. First up, we have the Emmy-nominated costume designer on Sirens, Caroline Duncan.
Hello.
I'm really living my whole Price is Right dream right now.
Yes.
Next, we have the Emmy-nominated editor on Sirens. Please welcome Catherine Haight, ACE.
Hi, thanks.
Up next, we have the set decorator on Sirens, who is also nominated for his work on The Penguin. Please welcome Rich Murray.
Hi, good afternoon.
And last but not least, we have the Emmy-nominated director of Sirens. Please welcome Nicole Cassell.
Hello, hello.
Congratulations on your Emmy nominations. I have two words for you. Hey, hey.
Hey,
Hey,
hey.
hey.
That's how you know I've seen the show. Let's dive in, shall we? To get started, just very generally, could each of you talk a little bit about your role on a series like Sirens and how you typically get started? Caroline, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So on all series, when I start prepping, I work really closely with the creator and the director to sort of figure out what the overall tone and aesthetic and the palette of the show are. And then as the casting gets refined and we start really diving into prep, I work closely with the production designer, the set decorator, hair, makeup, all the department heads to hone in on fabrics, silhouettes, textures to help really tell the story, in this case, of class, hit moments of humor, and tensions of horror, and bring these characters to life from the page into a really physical visual presence for the audience.
And Kate, what about you? When you sit down to work on a project, how do you begin?
Well, usually just with the first day of dailies.
Yeah.
But I try to get involved as soon as I can, even though as the editor I don't usually start until, right when shooting starts. So I start a day or two before that. But I always try to be at the table reads if I can, in the tone meetings, all of that, just so that I can get as involved and as much information as possible before I start cutting, before I start getting footage. But obviously every project is different, but the footage is always what leads me. I don't make decisions before I start seeing the dailies. Um, but once I get going, for me, it's 100%. I'm always just working from a place of emotion and just what the actors are doing that I'm responding to. Obviously, always working in collaboration with everybody else to make sure we're getting the right tone and vibe and feel. But it's always just I always work from a place of instinct, so that's where I always start.
And Rich, where do you begin as a set decorator?
Well, I was just thinking as we were going through everyone else's responses that it's funny that Nikki is the last one to answer this question, because in a way, literally everything came from her and from Molly in the script, and in that way, for me, it was sort of taking their lead on what was important aesthetically, and so I delved into Greek aesthetics, ancient Greek aesthetics. I delved into a lot of color and texture. Of course, the sort of the world of that influence and that wealth level in Martha's Vineyard-ish or wherever it is out of the Cape. And then I think that was about it. But what was important to them and what we found in the script essentially is where I started. It was kind of funny. I actually spoke to a professor from the University of Chicago on the aesthetics of the ancient Greek world. And gave me a lot of take on, oh, here are the things that are important. Here are all the musical instruments you're going to find, because music was obviously, and with the Sirens, music was very important to us, and so we tried to work a lot of that in visually into the design, and but essentially it all came from Molly Ann.
Well, Nicole, when you're setting the tone for everything on a project like this, like what are the conversations that you're having just to start the project?
Sure. Well, it's funny because I just had like multiple flashbacks with each of my first meetings with these people. And, with Rich, like a year ago, we're we sat around a table for like 2 days straight and just with the production designer. Caroline, I think you were there, and just did a deep dive on just the look, the look, the look. And one thing, Rich, you didn't mention, which I think you went wild with, was the uncanny and the weird as well. Not
With
just the Greek, the
with
uncanny.
oh, and the weird. Yes, it was this.
Yes,
It was the ancient Greek, and then the uncanny
yes,
was the weird. Right.
yes. He had, and nature. He had so much fun with that. Um, Tone, I guess it's like how to harness all of this. I am in my very first conversation with Molly, I said, my response to the script was, even though it's contemporary, it is world building, it is genre, because it's strange, it's funny, it's a little mysterious. We're not going for reality here. And that's what was so exciting. So I pulled together a visual presentation that I showed to Molly to make sure we were speaking the same language. And then, in bringing Caroline on board, she came to us with her first impressions, and I literally felt like she'd cracked my head open and taken out and then John Pano, the production designer, had done the same. And there was this immediate synergy of like, I'm really thinking of Julianne Moore's costumes. Like Rich had found the Tilda Swinton reference that went big in my lookbook, and it stayed that way throughout. So it really is, to me, I think of production as this big fat onion, and everything, every meeting, every department head, you're just constantly peeling the layers of decision. All that gets down to the chrysalis, which is action on set with the actors performing. And then all of that big fat messy onion goes to Kate, who has to find her way through it. And for this one, the tone is that razor's edge. But I said to Molly in my very first meeting, I'm seeing Raising Arizona and Rosemary's Baby, and I don't think those two films have ever been in the same sentence together. And it scared the shit out of many of our executives, but that's what I wanted us to deliver. And I think we nailed it. And as Kate knows, in production, in post, we are falling on either side of that razor's edge all the way till final cut. But it's just finding, is it too funny? Is it, and again, with every decision, for Caroline, she would bring in an assortment of costumes. They're all insanely amazing, but only, some are like maybe actually a little too insane, which was hard to do in this.
Yeah.
And same with Rich. He went bonkers. And, I think we'll get to it probably later, but it was so fun to see everyone just firing on all cylinders and clearly having so much fun. I think getting to unleash the creativity in this direction. There was no it has to be totally believable. It has to be totally real. It was like, let's push the boundaries. And it was such a treat to get to plant the seeds of inspiration and then just see them go wild with it.
Well, Nicole, you're nominated for the first episode, Exile, which you were navigating a lot of different tones. It starts as almost a black comedy and it ends as a horror movie. How were you approaching navigating that and setting up expectations for the audience? What were you hoping the audience would take from the first episode?
What I'd hope they'd take away is I have to watch the second episode, and that's that is literally the first minute, first minute in, you're like, let's hit it to 5 minutes after, and it's like, there's literally that truly is the goal, is just to keep people watching. And for me, in terms of tone, I just really wanted people to lean in and be like, I love when I don't know what's coming next, it makes me lean in. And, I don't want you sitting back, vegging out, crocheting. I'm calling out my daughter who goes like, you can't crochet and watch this.
I was going to say that's very specific.
I'm giving my daughter shade. And how we lace it together, like, to me, honestly, it's trusting the writing, because when I read the script, you go through the roller coaster of all these scenes and all these tones and emotions. And there's something in the writing that holds together just because you're propulsively moving through it. And then, it's what I always say is like, I don't want every scene to be a mash of all those references. There has to be the dreamy, ethereal opening of Michaela, and then the grounded, gutter rat whore of Devin, and then the like pastel, on steroids. That's the raising Arizona world of Simone. And it's allowing each scene to be truly what it is, and then but grounding it in their performances and the realism of the characters, and then trusting the glue. And Kate is part of that glue, obviously, in putting it together, but sound design, score. But to me, it really comes down to trusting the writing, because if I felt that way when I finished reading it, I will get people to feel that way when they finish watching it.
I mean, I haven't heard Gutter Rat Horror since people were signing my high school yearbook, so you're really taking me back.
Oh.
Thank you for that. So Exile, the first episode of Sirens, has a very, very stark difference in environments for these two sisters. There's Devin in Buffalo waking up in a drunk tank, going home to her father in their dilapidated house. And then there's Simone in Michaela's beautiful compound, which is not since Last Year at Marion Bad have I seen such precision in terms of lines.
Mm-hmm.
I'm staring at a Last Year at Marion Bad poster right now,
wow.
So it's always top of mind.
That's a compliment.
So I'm curious, how were you each approaching in your different ways, setting up this juxtaposition without making it feel overkill? And Rich, I would love to start with you, because you went to town on Buffalo.
Well, I think everything was all a color palette, texture for us. Everything was because so many people are so familiar with what Buffalo is. I think I want to say, and maybe I'm just imposing my own sort of thoughts on this, but it feels like the world of America knows that Buffalo in a way, and so what we had to do, and this is, I think, to make it less real, or to pull us out of the reality of what Buffalo is we had to make everything sort of like over the top and custom and different and unexpected and not seen again when we get to the compound, if that makes any sense. Like there's like we know what we are going to see and expect to see from Buffalo, and that's a great starting point for everyone to tell this story. And then when we pull out of that world, everything is a little bit sort of foreign, even to those people who are immune or aware of that sort of Martha's Nantucket sort of space, that island cape space, and so what we had to do is then take the class level on and sort of bump that up a notch to the point where everything we brought was a little weird. It was a little different. It had to be completely custom. There was nothing there that we could say, oh yeah, I know exactly where this element came from, where this piece came from, where it was, and what it was. And so we had to like bring it all the way out of the reality of what we know.
Well, and Caroline, how were you setting up the difference between those two worlds in terms of costuming without making it feel like obvious?
Yeah, I mean, costume-wise, we are only in Buffalo really briefly. So Megan's character, Devin, is really the conduit for the majority of the series until her dad and Raymond show up in the fourth episode. And Nikki and I wanted Buffalo to feel very grounded in reality. And Megan's clothing specifically to be very worn down and lived in. And to feel like, not only clothing that she had gone out in the night before, but kind of her go-to bar outfit, picking up a guy kind of outfit. So what was fun was when Buffalo came to Port Haven, how we showed it through that window. So it was usually on her cell phone in a FaceTime talk with Bruce and Ray. So we see the restaurant she worked at. We saw Bruce in their home a lot. And we went very primary in the colors. Every time we were in Buffalo, it was red, white, blue. It was Buffalo Bill's palette. Whereas on the island, we never, other than Megan in her red dress at the Whaler Inn, which was like a total callback to her color palette of Buffalo, we never put anyone in a primary color. Everything was very pastel in a very different world. So I would say that the way that we brought Buffalo into the world of Port Haven was definitely like in a stark, kind of ugly contrast to the soft pastel melodies that we see on the island. And then what Rich harped on and what Molly talks about so much is this is a piece really about class. And through wardrobe, we created micro classes even within the 1%. So when Devon's character, who's in her like black armor, gets off the ferry, everybody around her, it's, it feels like that Technicolor Alice in Wonderland moment, the way that Nikki had us populate the frame with an abundance of pastel and really like a shocking amount of pattern on pattern on patterns, sort of breaking rules that we would normally navigate around so that there was no visual pause at all for her character. So it's this very aggressive, terrifying place for her to find herself. It's also very funny. The tone is supposed to be very funny. And then as she gets higher and higher and higher through the ranks of this community and to Michaela, the colors and the pastels kind of mellow. So even within the world of pastel, in contrast with the world of Buffalo, there were all of these markers to show where you are on the ladder, on the rung to sort of the highest height of class and comfort and luxury.
Well, and we'll get to this later, but one of the beautiful things about your costume design is at either end of the spectrum, Michaela and Devon, it boils down to simplicity. They both have the simplest costumes.
Yes.
And we return to that at the final episode as well, when they have the moment on the ferry, and it's a chef's kiss mirror image of one another.
Nice.
And Nicole, how are you navigating directing the performances so that it feels of a piece with the show, but we're definitely in two disparate worlds? Simultaneously, they are sisters, so they share a common bond.
Directing performance is really connecting with what is the person, what is their backstory, and so what are they bringing into this moment, and what are they just literally feeling and doing in that moment. It's just truly physical and emotional in the moment, but again, it's like the context is what gives that broader class commentary.
I think one of the genius things about Megan's performance is she doesn't play Devon as someone who would try to put on airs to fit in when she arrives at Michaela's compound.
Right.
She's Buffalo through and through.
Yes. Yeah.
And just seeing that.
Right. So exactly. And that's one of, Michaela is surrounded by a zillion humans who are there to impress or serve or flock. And Devon could care less. And that's just, she is who she is inside and out. And she's flawed, but she's not going to kiss someone's ass. She's not going to be impressed or intimidated. And, and it's this amazing, I love that moment when they meet, and it's like, and it shows on Simone's face, like, this is Clash of the Titans right here in my living room.
And Kate, how are you navigating how much of Buffalo to show and how quickly we wanted to get to Michaela's compound?
Yeah, I mean, it's like any act one of a pilot. It's always a balancing act of how much setup you have before you get your main character where they need to be, which for, and this was getting Devon to the island as quickly as we could, but with already having a foundational understanding of who all our characters are. So yeah, I mean, initially the Buffalo stuff was a bit longer, but all the scenes are there. We just cut time out of the scenes. It was just about getting us there as quickly as we could while still understanding who she is, where she's at emotionally, who the dad is, and seeing that this is a world that's not great for Devon, that she's not happy here, um, and that she's been abandoned by her sister, or at least that's how she feels, and that's what's driving her. Um, but yeah, we did a lot of stuff too, like Caroline was talking about the contrast of the ugly with the beautiful, which, in editorial or in post-production in general, I should say, we did a lot of stuff there in terms of the color timing is, very sort of
Mhm.
blue and gray almost in Buffalo, and it's all very shiny and beautiful in Port Haven. We did the same thing with the sound design. There's a lot of, barking dogs and garbage trucks and that kind of stuff in
Yeah.
Buffalo, which you would never hear either of those in Port Haven,
Yeah.
So all these little pieces and the visual effects too. We made the house look a little grungier than it did on the day, that kind of stuff. All these little details that you do to build the contrast between the
Yeah.
two locations.
I would just love to add, if I may, on Rich's behalf, that in set dressing, so much of it obviously is also dictated by story and character. And like with what Rich did on the Buffalo set is, what's a house look like where a woman hasn't been present for 15 years, or 10, 15 years. And, and this kind of time capsule of how much hasn't changed since then. And if as things fall apart, a blanket becomes the drapes. Like the feminine roots are there and the layers of decay over it. And then in Michaela's house, she's erased the previous old historic family. Everything's new, everything's hers. So it's all of it is character driven and storytelling. Like he contributed to the plot that people carry into it, allowing us to not have to address that in dialogue.
Well, and continuing on with the first episode, Caroline, you're nominated for your work on Exile as well. And you also have a mammoth task to set everyone up in terms of costumes, because you have to set us up with the world. You have to give us an idea of who these people are. But in keeping with the true Sirens tone, there's a danger of slipping too far. And I would really love to zero in on Megan Fahey's transformation as Devon, because we see her in her night out clothes waking up. She hasn't slept. And by the end of the episode, she's had a day. And she ends up in a completely different outfit.
What did she say? You're not the first guy I had sex with on a boat, fucked on a boat today.
Yeah.
The second guy.
You're the
fucked
second
on a
guy.
boat today.
She's had a day. She's had a day.
As a smoker, I get it.
Such a great line. Yeah, so I mean, I think what's incredible about Devon's journey is that when we first meet her, we only know her in the context of leaving this drunk tank and Buffalo. We have no idea that she's about to get on this ferry and enter this other world. So as Kate was saying, we have to really quickly show an audience who a character is, and make them feel really believable, regardless of the tone. And so for Megan, Nikki and Molly and I felt like it was always that she was always going to be in all black or like very, very dark colors. I went for pieces on her that had a luster that we then killed and aged out of it, so that her clothing looked like clothes that she had for, maybe since high school. There were little like relics of her over the last 10 years. These are the things she parties into hard. And then became really important to me that once we knew that the world of Michaela and the staff, and we were going to meet Michaela in green, I really wanted to tie Megan in with that green lace trim on her camisole, so that as she sort of unpeels and takes off all of her layers and gets more and more sweaty and more kind of undressed, as she inappropriately and basically a bralette enters the Kell household, that green is connecting her to their space in a very, very subtle way. And we loved her feeling emboldened and comfortable in her body, and also a little defiant, so that not only is she there uninvited and her presence makes Simone and everyone very, very uncomfortable, but also it's almost like she's standing her ground, like she's really not apologetic whatsoever for who she is. And I don't think she's looking herself up and down and feeling embarrassment at all in her appearance. She feels this is her body and she feels really comfortable in it. And then within the span of the first episode, her metamorphosis is that once she kind of gets kicked out of the house by Michaela and dropped off at the Whaler Inn with an open tab at the boutique. We, we again, what Nicole and I created in the Whaler Inn was a slightly more conservative and country club version of the pastel island world. It was not so highlighter in color, and we wanted Megan in a beat and a color and a moment that felt really powerful and felt like what to her character, to Devon, the 1% would taste like, not the POV that the rest of the world is seen through. So I found this dress, this incredible South American designer, and we relined it and reworked it a bit. But the dress is made out of strips of satin, and so it looks very exoskeletal, and it feels very bondage forward. So that everything about it felt like something that her character would feel like sexually charged in and strong in, and she would again want the gaze, the male gaze, the female gaze, all the gazes on her in this space. And so we see, like, if she had money, she would not be putting on the Pulitzer pants. She would put on this dress. And that is, and then we see her in her sister's sweatshirt on the deck of the ferry. We don't really move into her transformation into the pastel doily clothes until the second episode, but I think it was a really fun way to set up what continues for this character to be like a series of degradations where she is forced to put on clothing that she's being asked to put on to humiliate her. So the first episode is really like until the final episode, the last moment of getting to sort of feel who she is in her own skin through costume.
But also that red dress, the bondage dress, it indicates later on that she's complicit in the way that
Totally.
that's what she chose for herself, choosing more cages for herself, even
Totally.
in the environment.
Yes. And
It's
you're so right. And then the next dress we built her, the Lily Pulitzer one, is a cage dress. So it's all in conversation with her arc, is all in conversation within itself. And that was definitely, yes, the first kind of clue that she's complicit and she's staying. She's here to get her sister out.
Well, and I love that she literally walks into the space wearing combat boots. And they're the boots,
Yeah.
She's been wearing those boots definitely for at least 5 years, if not longer. Like they are her armor.
Continuing to talk about the first episode, because I mean, this is what you're nominated for. What I find so compelling about it is you have no idea what's going on tonally. You have no idea the show that you're sitting down for, but everyone here set up the ultimate denouement. All of the Easter eggs are there in episode 1. So I'm curious, and this might be too broad of a question, but let's tackle it together. We're in this now. What were the things that were most important for each of you to convey about Simone, Michaela, and Devon? And either all three of them or just one of them that speaks particularly to you. And Nicole, I would love to start with you.
I mean, the most important to convey, we've talked about a little bit, Devon, it was for sure the, fearless, self-righteous, that she has a mission and a determination and irreverence to whatever's going on around her. She's all those things, in a nutshell. And Michaela, it is like this ethereal quality that she is, thanks to her wealth, so insanely powerful that there's no rules for her other than the rules she makes up, and she will wear a green silk gown to release a hawk and no one questions it. Like, it's the most impractical thing to wear out into lime infested tall grass. But no one, and again, I read the script and that is what I saw, and there's nothing logical about it, but she sets the rules and whatever she wants goes. And it's beautiful. And, and again, the people that she surrounded herself with are in some ways aspiring to her. And she sets the rules of this is the Easter egg palette around her, but she doesn't have to lower herself to wear the Easter egg colors. So she's our Greek goddess. And then for Simone, it was the aspirational quality of that she is all in, like all in on this aesthetic. And she's going to go hot pink. She's going to get every hair in line and eyebrow plucked. And, that there's actually a ferocity to her adorable exterior. So just quickly kind of saying, this is what your first impression is going to be. And then what's going to happen over the next 5 episodes is we're going to tear apart that facade and get to look underneath it.
Well, and Rich, I would love to talk to you about what you needed to convey in terms of Simone's bedroom in the first episode. How much of that is Michaela and how much of that is Simone? Why people are laughing? Did I say something?
Because it's
bedroom's
rich.
amazing.
It was unreal.
Rich.
Oh, it was.
Because it was
the
so
most
stupid,
amazing,
right?
crazy set.
It was so stupid in that, like, you can't
That was
not walk
amazing.
into that. You can't walk into that room and just not start giggling in a way, and that was essentially and it was weird because it wanted to be a joke of itself in a way, but it was leftover Michaela is how we sort of figured it, or it was the leftover last assistant, and then Michaela just kept updating it and essentially molding that assistant into that pastel Lily Pulitzer character that she wants to have surrounding her. And so all of those choices, every color in there, including all of the softness of the materials, because the rest of the house didn't have a lot of softness, so it wanted to feel safe and warm and inviting for that one person, right? But again, it was still like a little cage, and it was, and we built that cage around her, and we saw that in the paneling on the walls. It just felt like it was tight. You saw a lot of beams and stuff that you see elsewhere in the house, but in that room, it just felt sort of confining with the low ceiling, and everything was tight. A lot of that's due to John as well, John Pano, our designer. But I think something I wanted to about your first question, about like how to initially attack the character and carry that off in the first episode. What was important to me was that Michaela was a collector, Nikki mentioned, but she's also a hunter. And so I wanted that sort of dangerous, creepy edge to come through. So she's a collector in that wall of items, of objects behind her when she's holding the scepter. But everything else in the house is also very much like a part of telling the story of her as a hunter, as collector. So like at the end of the hallway, there's that sort of Damien Hirst-esque looking piece of art that is made up of butterflies. And what do birds eat but butterflies? Like there's the rope artwork hanging in the front entryway of the house. And of course, what do sirens do, right? They harness, or they collect, or they entice or ensnare sailors. And so all of the nets that we used, all of the imagery of the birds throughout the house, upstairs on the lawn. I mean, well, of course, the bird chandelier in the center of the foyer, right, is like perfectly like the perfect image of this is a bird cage. The whole house is a big bird cage to me. And then with all of these birds on that roost right there in the center of the piece, like exactly that. It's a collector's piece. It's exquisite. It's something we've never seen before, right? So it's custom in that way, and so it taps into all of those elements of what we were trying to do, both at a status level, at a culture level, and then also at a symbolic level of like, this is a collector lady who's who's also a predator. And gosh, like another piece of the art up on the wall upstairs, we saw the two sort of like Alex Katz's that were perfectly sort of for Kevin Bacon and Julianne Moore, which is exactly the type of art that level of person would have sort of commissioned at an auction or something, so it's very on the nose there. But then also up on that wall, we had just a collection of old fashioned boat rudders in a lineup, and you look at that and you're like, well, what is that? And I'm like, well, she collects rudderless people. She has the rudders. She actually holds the power of, and so of course that makes it the perfectly nautical island beach, play. But it's also the Sirens. It's also Jason and the Argonauts. It's also the boat has been shattered and destroyed, and she's collected those elements of boat and put them on the wall as her own trophies. So like every element in the house, we sort of like asked all of those questions. Like, and if it didn't hit on at least one or two of those elements, right, we were like, oh, it needs to hit like on all four elements. And every now and again when we did that, we're like, oh, it's perfect. Of course, that's the answer. Yeah.
I mean, Rich, you're the Taylor Swift of set decorators. Like, what?
I don't
There's
know
so
her
many Easter eggs to
well.
everything.
You're a poet.
It's where, but we all do that, right? I mean, like Nikki's like thought 14 times through every sort of like line delivery and exactly what the positioning is, and and Caroline does the same thing too. Like I see these colors, and I'm like, oh, of course, then we have to make all of all of the items in the house, essentially all the colors there have to be sort of nautical. Just give it that beach-y sort of background to everything else that Caroline's putting up as the pop of color, or as the pops of color, as the millions of pops of color, in all the patterns and textures and colors. So we're all doing that, and that was what was so joyous, I think, about this project is that everyone was on that page, and that only comes from Molly and Nikki. That's them driving the bus. I mean, that's what's going on here, and it was a perfect project for that.
You know, something that was really magical that happened so organically, that was multi-departmental, was John Pano, the production designer, and Rich came and got swatches of the household uniforms that we were building. We built that all. And then when I went to set, when it was going up and it was starting to get painted, I was like, oh my God, they painted the whole kitchen is like the
Yes.
exact color of the
Yeah.
uniforms very intentionally. And
Yeah.
I knew he was going to do it, but it was just so shocking
Yeah.
when I first walked onto set
Yeah,
and
yeah.
saw that kitchen, because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness. And then watching the cut of the episodes, and Kate, I mean, it's just amazing, like how organic and uncanny that all of that, that just
Yeah.
starts to feel like part of the uncanny that Nikki really, really honed in. And like, yes, of course, Michaela would make her staff look like an extension of her house. They're just
Yeah.
decorative objects.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was such a beautiful sort of synthesis of
Yeah.
all of us speaking the same visual language.
Kate, I want to talk to you about
Yeah.
episode 1 and about your work in general. You're also nominated for episode 1. And
Yes.
I'm curious, by the time everyone here has done their work and loaded the set with everything that they have contributed, was there something that you really fought to keep into your final cut in terms of this is so indicative of character, we have to maintain this?
I mean, I think that Nikki and Molly and we were all pretty much on the same page in terms of where we saw the episode going and what we wanted to fight for. We just really wanted to get it down to a fighting weight, I think, more than anything. I think all the scenes that you shot are in it. I think we didn't cut any full scenes from the pilot. And I mean, many of them are shorter. What did we cut? I can't even remember
Well, you're
anymore.
right. I mean, like in the bus, we lifted that little
Sure.
conversation. But yeah, so we
Yes,
still,
there are like
yeah.
little dialogue moments that went and things like that, but no full scenes. So the script was incredibly well written and thought through and thorough, and everything everybody had done before it got to me, like Nikki said, this is like the A team across the board. So I was dealing with this incredible footage and just like an abundance of riches. It was in terms of performance, in terms of the camera work, everything. Obviously, the production design and costumes, So it's actually a dream for me to be able to cut footage like this. It makes my job very easy. I'm not fighting with performance. I'm not fighting with bad camera work. I'm none of that. So it's really just about taking the absolute best of everything. And what we really did struggle with and work on the most, though, was the tone. And like we just really had to get it right in terms of couldn't be too weird. Some stuff was a little too weird that was shot that got cut out. And but make sure we kept the humor, but how broad could the humor be? How grounded should the jokes be? It was just a lot of the nuance that we were dealing with getting just right. Yeah.
But
Well,
can
and
I chime in again?
Yeah.
Have I interrupted you? I just
No,
have
go
to
ahead.
sing Kate's, one of the most thrilling discoveries Kate made in the opening episode was that dissolve of sister to sister when Devin's getting booted out and she's in the car. And early on, I had talked to Kate about using dissolves, but in a different scene. And I just loved seeing that she took that idea, but she found a spot we hadn't planned it for, and it just the it was like literally I leapt and clapped when I saw it because it was just so beautifully aligned. And then it was a synthesis of the episode and that story right there. Like these two sisters are going to go head to head, and it's all about their connection or the breakdown of
Yeah, I was equally as excited when I found that because there was only one take where Millie turned and her face was in profile. It was just dumb luck. And there's so many of those happy accidents that happen in editing, and they're always such a gift. But that one was really wonderful. Yeah.
well, Rich, you're nominated for your work on the Penguin, and I think that you bought an entire building as part of your set
That was
decorating. Is that what Kalina told me?
for that element of the Penguin. We were told to give a Hurricane Katrina level of devastation to an entire 4 block stretch of a street in Yonkers to dress it up. And so we had to essentially purchase a set from a set sale. We bought Billions. The show was closing down as we were shooting our part on Penguin. And so I actually bought like their Hero Brownstone set from them, including the front stoop, the front windows, the whole front elevation of it. And then we bought siding and insulation, and this whole set was like a 3-story house with staircases and chandeliers and bathtubs and everything inside it. We took it all apart, reassembled it on an empty lot on this vacant lot in Yonkers, and then destroyed it ourselves, and then added all of the siding and insulation and all the stuff that you would have found. It was, I think someone came up with, like, we had 100 semi trucks of trash on that one set, just trash. And that one building took probably 4 or 5 semi trucks itself to transport. But we had a whole truckload of just leaves, and we had a whole 2 dump trucks full of dirt for that, and 20 cars that we crashed. I mean, yeah. So that was a 2-day shoot, I think, or a day and a half shoot for that for the 100 trucks of trash.
What is it like coming from 100 dump trucks of trash to the world of Sirens and Michaela's beautifully decorated?
Literally a week later, really, right? It was almost the
No.
exact same. Well, it was almost the same. I mean, there wasn't much. I didn't have any time off, I don't think, between Penguin and Sirens. I don't think, and so it was an immediate like mind shift. But again, all of those crazy sort of Easter eggy things that we do on Sirens, we did on the Penguin too, and it's there. You'll see a lot of that sort of fun decor, decorating, all of those questions we ask ourselves that we did on Sirens. A lot of those same things we did with Kalina on the Penguin, because she's very much into that as well. And
I
it
mean,
was
talk about getting to know character from their home. As soon as you go into Oz's apartment in the Penguin, you know exactly who this man is and his pretensions
yeah,
of grandeur and what his idea of elegance is.
right,
And it's so
yes, and that was the decorator Rich Devine did that set. That's why we're both nominated, because he was also on part of most of episode 1 and part of the first block. And that was, but that was a Kalina idea, I think, about putting him in Jeweler's Row, on the second floor in Jeweler's Row, such that his bedroom literally was the entire security room, the box, the security post office boxes, or whatever that was. But that room, all the walls were just literally security lockers. It was for his bedroom, and it was just amazing to start there, and then to get to the end, where he's literally at the top of the hill as the underworld kingpin of Gotham.
Well, as we wrap up our conversation, which I could talk to all of you for hours, and Caroline, I think you and I have talked for hours before in our first conversation.
I think so too.
That's all the time we have today. Thank you for our panelists, Caroline, Catherine, Rich, and Nicole, for being here with us today to discuss their incredible work. Sirens is streaming on Netflix, and congratulations all of you again on your well-deserved Emmy nominations.